Okay, so now we're ready to do some calculations with speed and velocity now that we understand what they are. So to calculate either speed or velocity, we're going to do, as we said before, distance divided by time. When we have an equation where we have some quantity, right? So in this case, speed equal to something over something else, in this case, distance over time, we can utilize that triangle that we also used earlier in the year when we learned about density. So we use a density triangle then. This time we can use a speed triangle. So we're going to put speed in our lower left-hand corner, distance at the top, and then t in the bottom right corner. So same idea as before. If I'm trying to solve for speed, I'll do distance over time. Velocity is also distance over time, but as we learned, it also includes a direction. So since we will have a distance unit on the top, and we learned that distance could be measured in meters, miles, kilometers, centimeters, etc. So we have any sort of distance unit on the top and then any sort of time unit on the bottom, seconds, hours, minutes. So when we get our final answer for speed or velocity, it will have both a top and a bottom to the unit, just like when we talked about density and we would have grams per milliliter. Now we're going to have meters per second or miles per hour. Again, it's distance per time. From our speed equation, we can get the equations for distance and time. So just like with our density problems, we need to be able to solve for all three things that are involved in the equation. So you may be given the speed and the time, and you have to determine the distance. So our triangle can help us get that equation. So if I'm looking for distance, which is here on the top, and I look at the other letters, I see they're next to each other. So speed times time would give us the distance. Again, the distance would be a unit such as this, right? So meters, kilometers, centimeters, or miles, or feet. It just depends on the unit that we were given for speed for that particular problem. And then to determine the time, so if I look at where time is in my triangle, and I look at the other letters in relation to t, I can see that they are d over s, or distance over speed. So if I take the distance divided by the speed, I will end up with time, and our units for time might be things like seconds, hours, minutes. And so the triangle can certainly help us do this. Depending on our algebra skills, we can also use our algebra skills to get these equations. So if you want to just memorize one equation, you could memorize d equals s times t. And from that, you could get your other equations. So for example, if you want to solve for time, we could divide by speed on both sides. Speed over speed is 1. So I'd get t equals d over s, which is exactly what we get from our triangle. We're just using algebra to get that instead. Or if I have that same equation, so d equals s times t, if that's the one you want to memorize, and then we want to get speed out of it. So if I don't know the speed, I can divide both sides by time. Time over time is 1. So speed is distance over time. Again, same thing that we see from our triangle, but just using our algebra skills instead. So there are lots of choices here, just like we had lots of choices for our density problems. So you could memorize the triangle to get your three equations out of it. You could just straight up memorize those three equations. You could memorize one equation and use your algebra skills to get the other two equations. It doesn't really make a difference at this point, as long as you are able to come up with these three equations on your own, and then of course use them, which will be our next step.